Vault-Tec's tagline declared that it would enable its residents to prepare for the future. However, for the vast majority, this was a complete misnomer. Hundreds of thousands of scared citizens were herded underground into vaults, ostensibly to survive the Great War, without any knowledge that they instead would be unwilling participants in a grotesque experiment. As we travel through the wasteland, we come across the ruins of many a vault with insane experiments that led to often violent and destructive ends to their inhabitants. But in rare circumstances, some vaults were used for their actual purpose, to safeguard and protect humanity. So let's take a look at these today. Vault 101 is one that we would all recognise, as it's the starting location for the Lone Wanderer in Fallout 3. And although the Lone Wanderer is sent fleeing from the vault by the oppressive vault security, it actually is one of the better ones to live in. Unlike most other vaults, Vault 101 was intended to stay closed indefinitely, with the experiment being to observe the behaviour of an overseer when a vault never opened. As such, this particular vault was stocked with a lot of equipment needed to allow its function forever, without outside interference, except for a GEC, or Garden of Eden creation kit, since its inhabitants were never meant to leave the vault and repopulate the wastes. After the Great War occurred, the original Vault 101 overseer took their mission to heart. To this end, they convinced the entire population that the former United States was a destroyed, uninhabitable wasteland, which in the first decade or so wasn't strictly untrue. However, the overseer did go a step further, with pre-recorded radio messages and transmissions that would broadcast on vault radios, of people screaming, of howling monsters, all to create the impression that the vault was the only safe place on Earth. Which again, for a time, it kinda was. This overseer and their successor sowed the seeds for future authoritarian overseers with the mantra, "We're born in the vault, we live in the vault, and we die in the vault." However, after a century and a bit, in the year 2241, one overseer decided to forego their mission. To this end, a survey team was put together to explore the outside world, with contact being made with the nearby settlement of Megaton. 2 members of the survey even remained as unofficial ambassadors of the vault. This sense of openness to the outside world continued until Alphonse Almodovar assumed the mantle of overseer in 2258. Upon assuming power, Alphonse sent a new authoritarian isolationist policy for the vault, sealing the vault door, setting up security surveillance, and even having the adult population comply with the lie that the vault had never been opened. As such, a new generation of children grew up believing that the vault had never been opened since the Great War. Here, the vault took somewhat of a turn for a worse. Sure, it was a safe place stocked with food and water. Residents could work, raise a family, make friends, live. But it was also a police state run by a dictator who was a complete and utter nerd, who even inserted himself into the Vault-Tec aptitude test as the answer to the question, who is indisputably the most important person in Vault 101? He who shelters us from the harshness of the atomic wasteland, and to whom we owe everything we have, including our lives. Despite all of this, Vault 101 is still one of the best vaults to live in, but it does have its flaws obviously. Authoritarian rulers, radroach incursions, and the fact that since the overseer himself admits that they only have population left for a few generations, you might end up marrying your cousin. But hey, royalty did that for hundreds of years, and in comparison to the rest of the wasteland, in Vault 101, you live almost like royalty. Vault 81 is located in pre-war Boston, a short distance away from Fenway Park. Its purpose was to develop a universal cure for any and all disease and sickness that human beings could carry. And although this sounds noble, it actually wasn't, as the planned lab rats were the vault residents themselves. While one half of the vault was a fully functional normal vault, the other section was designed for the scientists running the experiment. All the mirrors and windows in Vault 81 were actually a one-way window, into which the scientists could observe the vault residents in their most private of lives. Beyond this, propellant nozzles were also hidden in their rooms that would allow them to be exposed to a range of diseases, as well as having the capacity to incinerate the inhabitants if the disease got out of control. So why was this human petri dish of a vault a good place to live? Because of the actions of its first overseer, Dr. Olivetti. Having been disgusted with the mission directive of the vault, Dr. Olivetti sought to undermine their plan. For one, she made sure that the alert system did not broadcast to the science team when the Great War happened, ensuring that they did not live to arrive at the vault. For the 3 scientists who did arrive on time, she acted business as usual until they were squirreled away in their side of the vault. Once locked in, she entombed them, cut off the disease delivery system, and left them to die. She then kept the true mission of the vault hidden from all the residents, with the truth dying along with her. Vault 81 operated much like many other control vaults, which is odd that they had all the necessary components to survive, given the fact that its residents were not meant to. They remained isolated from the wasteland, with the door firmly shut, until a young new overseer, McNamara, opened up the vault in 2277, 200 years after the Great War. While many of the residents complained, this was something that ultimately saved them. Overseer McNamara states the vault walls are beginning to crumble, which evidently is due to the lack of upkeep from the then unknown second vault. The parts and tools from outside trade managed to keep the vault afloat, and the food brought from outside gave them additional resources to survive on. Vault 81 is therefore a pretty good place to live, although they are a little xenophobic of outsiders. Only one wasteland resident has made their home here, and even he is treated with suspicion from many of the other residents. You can only imagine how disdainful they are of ghouls, synths, and supermutants. Life in the vault is fine if you work hard, but unfortunately, you do have to work extra hard. Double shifts are the norm here, and nearly everyone is tired and angry from busting their butts all day. The only real problem is the then unknown infected mole rats who are on the other side of the walls, carrying weaponized pathogens that humanity is not yet ready for. So as long as people stay on this side of the vault, and don't go into the other side of the vault to do chems, Bobby, everything will be fine. As a quick side note, I feel like every comment from every dude will be like, Vault 69 would be the best. The one where it was 99 women and 1 man locked in together. But I think you properly need to think about this. You wouldn't be running that place like the God Emperor of mankind. You would be a commodity. That vault would be just as bad for the man as the one that had 99 men and 1 woman. So no, that would not be one of the best vaults to live in. Constructed in Las Vegas underneath the Strip, Vault 21 was a unique vault that managed to survive all the way up until 2274. And ultimately, although the vault did eventually end, they did not share the same unfortunate fate of many other vault experiments. The dwellers weren't turned into brains in a jar, murdered by raiders, or become radioactive plant monsters. Instead, they lost control of their vault, but in a fair, even chance that it encapsulated the entire 200-year history of their vault. See, Vault 21 was a vault that had a social experiment tied to it. However, it was one of the rare occurrences where the experiment ultimately worked out for the good. Vault 21 relied on a system of pure equality, where every dweller had an equal place in their society, whether they were a janitor, or cook, or the overseer themselves, with the design of the vault being perfectly symmetrical. The most unique aspect of this, however, was that Vault 21 adhered to a patron saint, Lady Luck, with all problems and disagreements solved via gambling. Whatever the issue, be it a noise complaint or someone stole their sweet roll, each affected member of the vault would be given a chance to solve it. A chosen representative from each group would then gamble against each other to settle the dispute, via roulette, blackjack, poker, and many other games. As such, the vault continued on for centuries under this structure. No one ever felt cheated or unfairly treated, as they were, in their own words, all given the same chance, and Lady Luck will smile if the odds are played right. In 2274, Mr. House had begun to lay claim to the ruins of Las Vegas, now known as New Vegas. Having recruited tribals, now known as the 3 families to run his casinos, House sought to further consolidate control over the Strip. An emissary reached out to the vault residents, offering them a place in the new city-state that was emerging. A large portion of the vault were in favour of joining New Vegas and Mr. House, while the other section were seeking to retain their independence. As per their vault's ethos, chosen representatives from the for and against groups gambled for the right to open the vault or remain closed. And after a game of blackjack that lasted for many hours, the representative in favour of opening the vault to the outside world won, in an extremely risky move. The cheers of the pro-Mr. House group were short-lived, however, as having admitted Vault 21 into the New Vegas Strip, House legally became the owner of the vault, and not wanting a fortified bunker of potentially hostile residents on his doorstep, he chose to fill the entire vault with concrete. It was only by the pleadings from Sarah that he was convinced to leave the top section intact, not out of kindness of his heart, but after being convinced that this would be an option for more revenue by turning it into a hotel. 200 years of history was thrown out into the wasteland, with the vault residents forcibly evicted from their ancestral homes. However, they respected the decision to lose control of their vault to Mr. House, as this was won fair and square via the gambling and Lady Luck that their society had been built upon. To quote Thanos, "I used the stones to destroy the stones," but in this case, Mr. House used the Vault's fair system of gambling to resolve conflict to destroy the Vault that had a fair system of gambling to resolve conflict. Vault 111 is famous for being the opening vault for Fallout 4. In it, our sole survivor lies in cryostasis and witnesses agents of the Institutes murder their spouse and kidnap their child, before being awoken 60 years later themselves. Their release then sparks the events of Fallout 4, whatever direction that these may be. Despite its depressing state at the outset of Fallout 4, Vault 111 would legitimately be one of the best vaults to have been placed into, as although it is in the name that they were the sole survivor from the vault, this was actually not any fault of Vault-Tec, but instead the Institute deliberately choosing to switch off the life support system for the other residents. For some reason, it's never really explained why. The sole survivor, and Sean, were able to survive all the way into the post-war world via this vault, completely preserved and without any visible side effects of their cryogenic sleep. The curious thing is that the vault residents were not advised of the true nature of the vault. At the outset of the Great War, the frightened residents were ushered into the underground vault, and led to believe that the setup of the vault would be the same as many other control vaults. The Vault-Tec staff led them to cryotubes, advertising that they were for the purpose of decontamination, upon which said dwellers were then frozen in time. The original plan was for the vault to remain sealed for 180 days, after which an all-clear signal would be issued by Vault-Tec. However, when no signal arrived, tensions began to arise in the vault. A large faction of the Vault-Tec staff, primarily its security personnel, wished to open the vault, given the fact that only 6 months of food and medicine had been provided to them. The Overseer, however, was paralysed with fear about opening the vault door, declaring a lockdown on the vault to prohibit anyone leaving. He further went on to state that the loss of life in the opposing faction may be for their benefit, as they could afford to have less mouths to feed. The end result of this standoff is unknown, however, given the lack of many skeletons in the vault, as well as the deceased Overseer in their office, it may mean that the large security faction were able to force their way out of the vault. Notwithstanding this, Vault 111 would still be one of the better vaults to be in, as a dweller in particular. The sole survivor survived 210 years into the future, and each of the admitted dwellers could have also lived into the post-war world, had they not met the misfortune of the Institute and their machinations. The sole survivor effectively time-travelled, unfreezing 2 centuries into the future, with no understanding of exactly how much time had passed. The Vault-Tec rep, who himself wished to enter that vault and was denied, summed it up the best, stating that, "Well, I had to get to the future the hard way, living through the filth, the decay, and the bloodshed. But look at you, 200 years and you're still perfect. How? How is that possible?" Now, the 3 vaults that we see in the TV show, Vault 31, 32, and 33, is a bit of a rogue one to list in the best vaults category, but this list is categorically the best ones to live in as a vault dweller to survive to the future. The 3 vaults were a unique network of vaults that were directly connected to one another, yet also separated in order to prevent infectious disease or other danger to spread from one to the other. Trade was conducted between the 3 via the triennial trade, where once every 3 years the vaults would interact with one another. As an example, Vault 33 conducted trade of agricultural crops and machine parts in exchange for a breeder, a Vault 32 dweller, unrelated to anyone in Vault 33. Now, spoilers if you haven't yet watched the TV series, but there was a sinister underbelly for the whole operation. Vault 31, the other vault in the 3, is not actually a regular vault at all, but instead a cryostasis chamber, filled to the brim with pre-war Vault-Tec staff under the leadership of Bud Askins, a pre-war Vault-Tec executive and now Brainerd and Roomba. The entire purpose of the 3 vault system was for Vault 32 and Vault 33 to provide the Vault-Tec executives of Vault 31 with a breeding pool of genetically selected residents to create, in Bud's words, a new class of supermanagers. This, tied in with their plot to have potentially started the Great War, was a key goal for Vault-Tec executives to reclaim the wasteland under their stewardship, no longer beholden to any pre- or post-war governments. Now, yes, the fact that these 3 vaults are ground zero for a terrible masterminded plot that stems back to pre-war days is a bit of a bummer. And yes, Vault 32 were eradicated when they discovered this, killed their overseer, and had their own civil war where everyone died. But it is important to note that if there is one vault that Vault-Tec would want to continue to survive into the future, it is these vaults in particular. And while many others have fallen into disrepair over time, Vault 32 and 33 survived basically without incident for 200 years. It was only the Civil War in Vault 32, and then subsequently 2 years later, the Raider invasion of Vault 33, that were the first known major incidents in that entire time. While Wastelanders struggled to survive, dwellers in Vault 32 and 33 had a safe, productive, and well-fed privileged life, outside of the manufactured crises that Vault 31 would use to install one of their population as overseer. In the meantime, the Vault 32 and Vault 33 dwellers were focused on keeping their vault operational and training for the eventual reclamation day. They were able to develop their skills as part of community organisations like the Young Pipefitters Association, Gymnastics Club, fencing team, or the shooting range. They were even spared the onslaught from the Master and the Enclave, who were directly targeting Vault populations on the west coast. So yeah, to a point, in Vault 32 or 33, you are as close to the most evil corporation as anybody in the post-war world. But also in a way, this keeps you somewhat safe. Vault-Tec aren't planning to take a shit on their own kitchen table. In conclusion, being in one of these above vaults would be like winning the lottery in the post-war world. But it is a sad example of how far humanity has fallen, that living in one of these underground rabbit warrens is a luxury. Please let me know if there's any other vaults that you think would have been great to live in that I missed. I also plan to do a video on the absolute worst ones, so chuck a comment below if there's one that you think would be particularly diabolical. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you for another video.